To order. Roll call, please.
Chair Schlum,
Here.
Board Member Dickey. Here. Board Member Elke.
Here.
Board Member Hanson. Here. Vice Chair Brown.
Here.
Board Member Leger.
Here.
Board Member Cantino.
Here. Any speaker cards down?
No, sir.
All right. Look for item number 1, consideration of approving the Eagle Mountain Community Facility District Board meeting minutes of June 3rd. Can I get a motion? So moved.
Second.
Any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir.
All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Chairman 7-0.
All right, thanks. Now open up a public hearing for item number 2, which is a public hearing regarding the resolution EMCFD 2010-02, approving the final budget on the district for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2010 and ending June 30th, 2011. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. The tentative budget for the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District was approved by the district chairman and the board on June 8th. Approval of the resolution tonight will adopt the tentative budget as the final. I did want to let the chairman and the board know that there is actually a typographical error on the final budget, and the error is on the administrative costs. They're not 10,266. They're actually only 7,350. The corrected schedule will be given to the town clerk for posting. That matches what's in the budget. So there was just a typo error on this. Also let the board know that when this was put together, the anticipated tax levy was going to be $1.29, but it's actually, we've had tax receipts come in since then, and so it's actually going to be less. It's going to be closer to $1.22. So just wanted to let the chairman and the board know that. And then just the final thing, those bonds are scheduled to be paid off in 2021. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Julie. So the tentative budget can be considered as the final budget?
Yes, Chairman, and the new amount will be less. It will be $411,710 as opposed to $414,626.
Okay. Thank you. I'll close the public hearing for item number 2 and go to item 3, consideration of resolution EMCFD 2010-02 as presented, and look for a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Andrew, with those items that were pointed out, are we good to move on resolution 2010-02, adopting the tentative budget as a final budget for fiscal year?
Yes, as long as the motion included the changes by Ms. Getty.
All right. Does the motion include the changes? And the second? Who had the second?
Second.
All right. Any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir.
All right. Any questions, comments from the board members? All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Chairman 7-0.
All right. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Julie. I'll move on to our next board meeting. I'll call the special session of the Cottonwoods Maintenance District Board to order. Roll call, please.
Board Member Dickey. Here. Chairman Schlum.
Here.
Vice Chair Brown.
Here.
Board Member Cantino. Here. Board Member Leger.
Here.
Board Member Hanson. Here. Board Member Elke.
Here. All right. Thank you very much. Any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir.
All right. First item, consideration approving the Cottonwood Maintenance District Board meeting minutes of June 3, 2010. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any speaker cards on the minutes?
No, sir.
All right. May I get if you're in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Chairman 7-0.
All right. Now open up the public hearing for item number 2, public hearing regarding resolution CMD 2010-02, approving the final budget of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2010, ending June 30th, 2011. Hi, Julie.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. The tentative budget for the Cottonwoods Maintenance District was approved by the district chairman and members of the board on June the 8th. Approval of this resolution will adopt the tentative budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2010 and ending June 30th, 2011. Unlike the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District, this is a tax levy that's fixed. It'll be $57.15 per property owner, and it's in perpetuity. There's no ending date to it. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? We'll close the public hearing for item 2 and move on to item 3, consideration of resolution CMD 2010-02, just as presented, and request a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any speaker cards?
No, sir.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Chairman, 7-0.
All right, thanks. Item 4, adjournment. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes our special session on Cottonwoods, and we can move right in, as long as we're ready to go, into our special and regular sessions of the Fountain Hills Town Council. Let me see here, make sure we do these, make sure I do the pledge in the right spot. All right, move on into our special session, call the special session to order, and roll call once again.
Mayor Schlum?
Here.
Councilmember Cantino? Councilmember Leger? Here. Vice Mayor Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Hanson? Here. Councilmember Elke?
Here.
Councilmember Dickey? Here.
Thank you very much. First item on our special session is consideration ordinance 10-02, amending the town tax code by increasing the tax rate on transient lodging, providing penalties for the violation thereof, providing for the severability, making provision for existing contracts, and designating an effective date. Hey, Julie.
Thank you, Mayor. Over the past several months, a committee was formed to identify funding for the community contracts that include tourism, Boys and Girls Club of Scottsdale, Fountain Hills Community Theater, and Extended Hands Food Bank. One of the proposals was to increase the Fountain Hills Transit Lodging, or the bed tax, to 5% from the existing 3%. The additional funds would be used to help fund tourism. Ordinance 10-02 is presented for the council to consider, and if approved, would amend Section 8A-447 of the tax code. Because the Department of Revenue has interpreted the confidentiality statutes that restrict town employees from disclosing any taxpayer information that could be used to discern gross revenue from less than 10 taxpayers, it is not possible to discuss how much potential revenue could be derived from this increase. Staff has incorporated the proposed increase into the general fund budget. However, if it is the council's desire to make changes to the proposed tax rate, the difference will be absorbed within the general fund contingency line item. The committee recommends approval of ordinance 10-02.
All right, thank you very much. So a motion right now to move on what staff suggests in motion would increase the tax rate by 2% from 3 to 5% for the bed tax. All right.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Anyone from the public on this item?
No, sir.
All right, thanks. Council, want to have a little discussion? I know we've had exchange of information from staff and from public. Before we have a motion, maybe we have a little discussion. Councilmember Elke?
Ms. Getty, this particular proposal or this particular, ordinance would only affect the funds that are going to the chamber. Is that correct?
Mayor Schlum, Councilman Alke, the funds actually would go into the general fund to help fund tourism.
Okay. So specifically for tourism, this wouldn't be funds that would go to, for example, social services, Boys and Girls Club, or the community theater. Is that correct?
Mayor Schlum, Councilman Elke, when it goes into the general fund, we then can appropriate the funds to tourism, but they're not specifically sent right over for tourism. But technically, you're correct.
Okay. So the funds that you would receive for this increase in the bed tax would be designated, or the increase of revenues that you would get would be specifically for tourism for that contract. Is that correct?
We had quite a bit of discussion even prior to Councilman Nelke coming up here and joining us regarding the bed tax and how it's done in some places and how it's done others, and how that this is more closely tied to the expenditure, but it is not tied to that. We also had discussion of having a separate fund. We did not go down that road. We did not put this into a quote-unquote protected account, which really wouldn't have been a protected account. It does go, as it has before, into the general fund.
Okay.
So there really is nothing to be assured that it's tied to anything, at least at this point. Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thank you. Part of the discussion at the time was about from the subcommittee was to raise certain taxes that would immediately go into the contracts. So there wasn't support from the council at that time to do that in a dedicated way. And then the other part of that is that these contracts, since they're going to be appearing to us as almost like an amendment or a continuation for 1 year, it's not something that we're going to be continuing necessarily to fund in the same way or for the same reasons or even to the same entities. So at this point, and seeing as we know that we have revenue challenges, we had gone ahead at that time and said we may be able to support some of this revenue enhancement if it goes into the general fund for the good of the future, not just for one specific thing. So I think my point trying to make is that these entities may not exist in the same way or even be the same ones after this coming year.
Yep. Councilmember Leger.
Julie, for clarity's sake, for the public who may be watching, excuse me, I've received several emails and a couple phone calls. Folks just don't seem to understand why is it that this is not going into a tourism fund. Why is it that our bed tax cannot be dedicated solely to tourism? Now, you've explained that to me a number of times. For the benefit of the public, could you discuss why it cannot be an isolated fund called tourism, or in fact anything else?
Mayor Slum, Councilman Leger, the challenge that we had with this is if we dedicated the specific bed tax to a specific use, the challenge is because we have fewer than 10 taxpayers in this category that have bed tax, we would never be able to disclose how much revenue we get from the bed tax, so we can't segregate it and show it anywhere as specific revenue from bed tax that could be used for a specific purpose. So that's the reason that the bed tax is within the general fund and is included within our local sales tax. It's not identifiable, so people then can't trace back to determine how much what the gross revenue is from the hotels that we have in town.
Thank you, Julie. Mayor, just to follow up, and if, as an entity, you as a finance director or staff or the town was to do that and reveal what that number is, are there any legal consequences?
Mayor Slum, Councilman Leger, yes, it's actually a felony, I believe. It's pretty severe, the penalty for disclosing taxpayer information.
Okay, so that's the rationale why we will put it into the general fund if we move with this increase,
Yes.
as we have in previous years. Thank you, Julie.
Yes,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Councilmember Hanson.
Mayor. Julie, if this does not pass, would the contracts be able to go forward as presented on the agenda?
Mayor Slum, Councilman Hanson, if this does not pass, then the difference, we've already included the revenue in the general fund, so we would take it out, but the funds would come out of the contingency.
Thank you.
All right, so if you could, a lot of the dialogue, at least some emails we've seen, talked about where would this leave us, this adding 2%, going from 3 to 5%. Where would that leave us as far as an overall sales tax to our hotels, in essence, for the visitors that come to Fountain Hills? Where would that leave us if we add the 2% to the 3% today?
Mayor Slum, we would, taking into account all the taxes in the state that the hotels pay, we would, if we increase it to 5%, we would actually be the highest. We'd be at 15.87%, and the next one after that is 15.27 in Cave Creek. So we would be the highest.
And our neighboring community, Scottsdale, increased theirs 2%, correct?
Mayor, that's correct. Their total tax rate is 14.92 because they have only a 1.65 tax rate. We have 2.6.
Okay, so 2.6 after they increase to 5%, they will have what will their total bed tax be?
Their total bed tax will be 14.92.
Okay. Councilmember Dickey?
Just to that point, the difference being that the same that it's been this entire time, 0.95, because the real difference is our regular 2.6% sales tax. We'd have the same bed tax, and the amount difference between Scottsdale and Fountain Hills would remain the same as it's been,
Right.
at least for Scottsdale.
Correct.
Correct. So if we were to go up to the 5%, the difference with Scottsdale, for example, would be the same difference we've had prior to when we both increased to 2%, if we were both to increase to 2%.
Correct, Mayor.
There are other communities that are higher than us, but maybe didn't increase it as much perhaps this year or the year prior. So if we were to increase it to 5, we would then become the highest. Is that what you had seen, Councilmember Dickey? Okay. So the discussion that I've seen has been, do you go up to the 2%? Do you, I don't think anyone up here is real excited about being the highest. But also, we all understand the challenge we have with revenues, and the discussion has been what came out of the committee was a 2%, and also understanding the importance of having revenues come in to fund various things, including tourism. Every dollar or percent we take out of what we considered moving forward on is another dollar that we need to either find somewhere else or reduce from our contingency. So it's not a willy-nilly decision to go down 1% or find a happy medium in essence. But I also, I'm sure all council members would agree, we don't want to put our hotels in a detrimental situation, or we want them to certainly remain competitive as they are today. And so I think we can find ourselves a place where we can get comfortable tonight if we have a little dialogue, and hope we can do that tonight and make this part of our budget so we can move forward rather cleanly. So 15.87 is where we would be at 5%.
That's correct, Mayor.
And I've heard many folks talk about not going over 15. And I think someone alluded to New York City, who's at 14.875. I think they increased it about as much as they could without going over that 15% barrier. But also, we also need to further go back even further to understand why we are at 2.6 as far as a town sales tax over and above the state sales tax to begin with. And that's because other communities have other ways of funding general fund operations, perhaps through a property tax or other things similar to the way we funded fire protection in the past, which was through a property tax. So that went away. We increased our sales tax, which makes these adjustments another % higher because we increased it 1% years back. So that's the challenge we have tonight. I'll look for some input from council. Councilmember Dickey?
Oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Leger?
Thank you, Mayor. Julie, just a clarifying question. The chart that's been presented to us and the numbers that we're bantering around this evening, that does include the temporary 1% state tax, is that correct? Okay, so
That's correct.
So in terms of the sensitivity around being over 15%, we have to understand that state tax is temporary, and that will move many folks under 15%. It's also my understanding that on this chart there's other communities that are contemplating increasing their bed tax, but it doesn't show up on here. For example, Tempe, it's my understanding, is looking at 2%. They're currently at 13.07. That would put them at 15.07 if in fact that information I received is accurate. So I just thought I'd toss that out there, but this does include the 1% sales tax from the state that will, which is only temporary for 3 years. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, thank you. Paradise Valley also raised theirs by 0.4, so theirs goes up, well, of course not as much as ours, but it does go up a little bit, so that's also not on this chart. And then you mentioned New York, and there's other, it's a little bit hard to figure out how to compare because they have other fees and things like that, and I believe if there's a casino, there are other fees that'll show up. So just speaking as a consumer, I guess I would say that when you go and look for a room, you kind of get the attraction of what the low rate is or what the rate is, and that kind of gets you in the game. And then you start looking through, and then you see what your bottom line is. And I'm not disparaging that, you don't want to be the most when you add these 5 things together, 4 of which are identical for everybody in Maricopa County. But I also want to try and figure out in my mind, what does that really mean? And if your rooms are actually less, are people going to see maybe a more favorable bottom line? So, so some of the things we can talk about are big picture, which is we have a revenue problem. We know we have a revenue problem. This is a long-term solution, one of the few tools that we actually have to look at. And as a matter of fact, the committee that brought the recommendation back to go up here also wanted us to raise franchise fees or taxes, do you call them fees? And also beverage and food taxes. So there were actually 3 recommendations from that subcommittee to raise 3 items. So we've kind of, we could all kind of get around this because it related to maybe to tourism and things like that. But I think when we're looking at these long-term problems that we have, just for a quick example, the transportation that we have here, we have an $87,000 grant this year to get us through so we didn't have to drop and give that bad news July 1. Next July 1, you know, I don't really know. This tax will help us, will help us along the way. So am I saying I won't look at anything lower? No, I think if it went up 1.3 instead of 2, it would still keep us under Cave Creek. But I also would like to ask if people actually know that Cave Creek has been the highest all this time, and has that really affected anybody's plans to travel? And I'm just putting that stuff out because I don't really know. I only know as somebody that would make reservations and go someplace. So I just offer that.
Good. That is, yep, curious. Anyone else on this item? Thank you. Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out that it isn't a great deal of revenue, and I personally don't feel that an extra penny going from one penny to 2 pennies is going to keep somebody from staying in Fountain Hills and living in one of the hotels and enjoying the fountain. And I would like to point out that a major issue was the length of the time to run the fountain, and somehow we have massaged the budget to where we can run the fountain full-time. Maybe we could look at, if we leave this at 2%, maybe we could look at having enough money in the general fund and being able to allocate it without having to just wring every penny out of every corner to run the fountain. So I see a lot of benefit in raising it to 2 points. And I will also point out that at the time we were looking for additional revenue, even though it hasn't come into effect yet, we didn't hesitate. I believe it was 7-0 when we raised the development fee 30-some, 40-some %, and it was a 7-0 vote. And it's all about trying to find enough revenue to run Fountain Hills. And so I'm a full supporter in leaving the recommendation from the committee that they brought to us 2%, and I'm going to support that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone from the public on this side?
No, sir.
Okay, maybe I asked already. Thank you. The any other dialogue here? Maybe someone will make a motion here after I mention one other thing, is that we did consider some increases, and most of the increases in fees or taxes that we've considered, we've done as much as, we've said no as much as I think we could. Franchise fees, increasing the restaurant bar fees, we've said no, it's now not the time to tax people when the economy is so down and dollars are so tight, no, and then still having to balance the fact we have to operate our community in a way that folks are going to see benefit and property values are going to be maintained and on and on. So that's why we're considering an increase today, obviously, is because we need to have another avenue for some additional revenues. But we said no to most everything, or, for example, our fee schedule we went through remained pretty much flat, didn't really increase that. We talked a lot about home delivered meals and had a very modest increase and took the recommendation of the Senior Services Commission, memberships included in that as well, as a very modest increase. And then, of course, we've done some dramatic cost reductions. Staff's done a great job through innovations, and also we've had to say goodbye to quite a few folks that were formerly on the team. So we've done a lot on the, way beyond the belt tightening stage. So that's why this is a significant conversation, although it may not equate to a great deal of revenue. It is a long-term solution, and we have a very modest base to collect this from. That's why we can't talk about the dollar amount. So, Councilmember Elke, do you have one other item?
And I think you bring up a great point, Mayor. We do have a modest base. I don't know that the significance of the impact that this is going to have on our town for long-term effects, but I think it is going to have an impact on certainly our community, people wanting to visit. We want to encourage tourism. We want to encourage people to come to our town. And I think I always have concerns whenever we're talking about raising taxes, because once it's raised, it rarely does a tax come back down again. And if we were inclined to increase the bed tax fee, I would be more comfortable with something in the way of 0.5%, and perhaps the council revisit this again next year. It's always something that you can look at again the following year. But again, I think if we raise it by 2% or even 1%, we're not going to see when the economy does turn around and our revenue streams are coming in. I wouldn't anticipate the council then dialing that back down to where it was to encourage people to come out here again. So I'd be more comfortable with something in the range of about 0.5%.
Okay. Any other dialogue on this item? And then someone will make a motion. Councilmember Leger.
Yeah, just looking at a couple scenarios here. Currently, at 3%, let's say you take an average room price in Fountain Hills of $75, which could be high, probably pretty average, seeing that Copperwind's not in business any longer. 3% would be $10.40 a night. At 5%, that tax would be $11.90. So we're talking $1.50 difference. And I think it's important to put this thing into perspective. Psychologically, yes, we don't want to be the highest. Emotionally, we don't want to be the highest. I travel quite a bit, and the only time I look at the taxes when I get my bill, and I'm shocked, but it usually doesn't prevent me from going someplace. Also, another scenario is that people often compare us to Scottsdale and say we want to be competitive with Scottsdale. I mean, Scottsdale's our main competition. At least it seems that our tourism folks are competing for those Scottsdale dollars. And as was pointed out, we have been 0.95% higher historically, and it would remain the same. Also, I've heard someone mention tonight the notion of rooms being costing more in a different community. For example, if you use an average cost of $75 and you add our room tax in Fountain Hills at 5%, you're paying $114.92 for your room. It's fair to say that that same room in Scottsdale would probably be $100 at their current tax rate. That room would be, looking at the wrong numbers here. That room in Fountain Hills would be $86. That room in Scottsdale would be $114. So numbers are numbers, but when you look at different scenarios, you're talking that 2% adds up to $1.50. And when you're start getting into comparing community to communities like Cave Creek, Mesa, Tempe, where the room rates are a lot higher, at the end of the day, that bill is going to be significantly higher for similar accommodations, which I don't think would deter anyone. However, it is a good argument that we don't necessarily want to be the highest on the chart. So I just thought I'd point that out. That just kind of gives a different perspective for myself.
Thank you, Councilmember Leger. All right, thanks for the great dialogue and thanks for a great input. It's a tough time in the economy. We've also heard from the hotels that they're very concerned about this. We want them to be as healthy as possible. Councilmember Leger mentioned Copperwind. I know they still have folks up there. They definitely are still serving some great meals, and there's some great group packages that have been going on in there. There have been guests up at Copperwind, and it still does remain open. It's a great place to go. But we also are big supporters of tourism here in Fountain Hills, and it's a part of our economy, so we need to we're taking our time on this decision. But I've heard some good dialogue, and understanding that the 1% increase that'll be kicking in is a 3-year temporary sales tax increase from the state, so our sales tax for everything across the retail or across the town will come down 1% in 3 years, with that, which is going to be good as far as lessening taxes. But I've heard some dialogue on both sides, 2%, 0.5%, so I'll make a motion for a 1% increase in the bed tax. Could I get a second?
Second.
All right. Any other dialogue on this item?
I'd like to amend your motion.
Yes, Councilmember Dickey.
I move to raise it by 1.3%.
All right, we have amendment to the motion. Do we have a second to the amendment?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the amendment? All right. All in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Roll call.
Councilmember Cantino?
Nay.
Councilmember Hanson?
Nay.
Councilmember Luce?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Aye.
And Mayor Schlum?
Nay.
3-4.
Failed. Thank you. All right, back to the original motion, 1% increase, which would bring it to 14.87 under that 15%. Councilmember Elke.
May I make a motion to that, or amendment to that motion to make it 0.5%, 0.5%?
A motion to amend to 0.5%. Do we have a second? All right, motion fails. Lack of a second. Back to the main motion. Any dialogue, discussion, questions for staff related to that? 1%. Councilmember Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. With the 1%, at least we're still under Scottsdale, at 14.87 to 14.92. And also, we did receive some correspondence from the Chamber of Commerce on behalf of the bedroom, the tourism, or the hotel
Hotels.
industry. Thank you. And they were suggesting that we go with the 1%.
Good, thank you. Any other dialogue before we make them? Yes, Councilmember Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. If we go below the original motion here, it was suggested that to make it up, it might come from contingency fund, and I just wanted to voice that if I vote yes on this, it doesn't mean I'm going to vote yes on contingency funds being used to go to any of the contracts.
Thank you. Anything else on, we're on the main motion, 1% increase? All right. All in favor of the 1%, the motion and seconded, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
All right, thank you, everybody. And thank you, staff, for working with us on that one. I know we had a lot of last-minute dialogue on that one. Appreciate it. Item number 2, consideration resolution 2010-16, adopting the amended and restated Town of Fountain Hills financial policies, reducing the allocation of construction sales tax to capital projects from 85% to 50%. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, over the past several months, the committee was formed to identify the funding for the community contracts, including tourism, Boys and Girls Club, the theater, and the food bank. Another one of the proposals was to decrease the percentage of one-time construction sales tax that is transferred from the general fund for one-time capital expenditures from 85% to 50%. This requires a resolution to amend the town's financial policies. If approved, the additional revenue would be added to the general fund where the community contracts are funded. Staff has already incorporated the proposed increase into the general fund budget. However, if it is the council's desire to make changes, the proposed transfer percentage, the difference will be absorbed within the general fund contingency line item as they were before. And in this case, we don't have to worry about the confidentiality statute, and the difference is about $48,000.
All right, thank you very much. Any speakers on this item?
No,
Speaker
sir.
cards? All right. All right, council, look for let me see if there's a specially worded motion here.
I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Lejay.
I move to approve resolution number 210-16, excuse me, amending the town's financial policies to decrease the allocation of construction sales tax redirect to the capital projects fund from 85% to 50% to fund community projects for FY 10-11.
All right, motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Councilmember, thank you very much for the second. Questions? Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, the motion, the way it's written, says to fund community contracts, and I would like to, I don't know, I guess amend that. This really isn't just for that. So I would say, I'd like to amend it to say that we are redirecting Okay, wait, what should I say? Andrew?
Thank you,
To the general
Councilmember
fund
Dickey. I
or
think
something?
the new language in here is simply the to fund community contracts for fiscal years 10, 11. Would it be appropriate then perhaps to have just that stricken, that part of the motion, the last few words, to fund community
It
contracts?
would, and again, to clarify, that's because we're changing this, we're not just doing a one-year change, we're doing a change that we if things get better again, because the philosophy behind these construction sales taxes are really great, because they're usually to go for something that doesn't have ongoing expenses. But at this time, we're not just doing it for the year. So I would say that I would, if you could strike it, but would you have to say for the general fund of FY, no, it's just period. Yeah, just strike it.
So do we need amendment to the motion, or do we just have restated motions?
If the main motion is restated, then you don't have to amend it.
All right, who made the motion?
Or Henry can't talk.
Are you comfortable with restating that?
I'll move to approve resolution number 21016, amending the town's financial policies to decrease the allocation of construction sales tax redirected to capital projects fund from 85% to 50%, period.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any other dialogue on that item? I think we asked for public, nothing there. Thank you very much. All right. We have motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you very much. And now we'll open a public hearing for item number 3 regarding Resolution 2010-23, adopting the tentative budget as the final budget for 2010-2011 fiscal year budget for the town of Fountain Hills. Mary?
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, the item before you is the public hearing, the continued public hearing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2010-2011. Staff is here to address any continuing questions the council might have and to make you comfortable with the adoption of a resolution of the budget.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we just talked about a couple of revenue impacting items. Some of them are changed. How do we address, for example, the 1% from 2% change?
There's sufficient funds in the budgeted contingency to deal with the two amendments that have been made previously.
Okay, so given what we've discussed, a motion to approve Resolution 2010-23, adopting the tentative budget as the final budget for fiscal year 2010-11 will suffice as a budget to adopt the tentative as the final budget?
That is correct.
Okay. So do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Anyone from the public on this item? I'm sorry, we're in the public hearing. We don't do call the public until the next item, correct? Is that right, Andrew?
Made a motion.
Yeah, we don't do a motion at this time, so. Can I undo motions there, Andrew? I'm jumping ahead to item 4.
How about we just take public comment?
All right, thank you. Any public comment on the public, during the public hearing?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing and move on to item 3, and move on to item 4, consideration resolution 2010-23, as just discussed. Now may I get a motion? Don't be shy now.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone on this item from the public?
No, Mayor.
All right, thanks, council. So here we are, adopting the tentative budget we've been discussing for a couple of months now as the final budget. Questions, comments for staff? Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, the amount that we just changed by changing the tax, the bed tax, whatever it is,
Yeah.
Obviously has to be made up for. And they're saying that we can go ahead and vote on this based on the fact that we have contingency. What would I do if I wanted to try to say, well, can we get it from something else? Can I do that when we do the contracts, or do I do that during the budget, or can I approve this budget without, again, saying that I'm all for taking that entire amount out of contingency? Can I approve the budget now?
Well, I believe you obviously you'll have, for items that come before council to be expended, you'll have a opportunity to discuss those items at that time.
Okay.
But I think you're free to also talk about
Well,
revenue
given the-
items. And
Excuse me,
yes.
Mayor, thank you. Given the fact that no matter what, that you exactly made the point, most of these things, or a lot of these things come back to us, and also, as the year goes on, obviously things change, they hopefully get better, and there may be chances then to be able to make up or change, or even change some places where we might need to spend some money, and do that as a council without it making us take it from a contingency. So I'm okay for now.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the budget? All right. Councilmember Hanson.
Thank you. I know we are transitioning into a new format for the budget, but I do have some concerns that we're losing something in that process. We used to get detail pages. Now we only get detail pages on departments and not divisions. And I find it very beneficial on the old line item pages because you have a 5-year history, and it makes it much easier to go back and see, you know, how have we done the past year, how do we compare with previous years. And I know we have, you know, the new software, but it would be nice if they're going forward, if there would be some way to be able to still create that same type of report so we have that historical perspective. And then there's an example on, let's see, it was page 278. And this is where, under the Municipal Property Corporation, it shows the expenditures, the MPC debt service. And in previous years, those were broken out by the the mountain bond payment, the Civic Center, Phase 2 bonds, and the Community Center. So it was very clear what the balance was in each one of those funds. And as you can see, as we're moving forward with the new system, it's now being shown as principal, interest, and administration fee, but it's combining all of those other line items in one amount. So you no longer can see, you know, okay, how much is mountain bond payment and how much is that. And I think it's great to show the principal and interest, and we could do that, but if we could also maybe do it for each one of those other bonds so that we, you know, have a better idea of what it is. And I think that's where I'm struggling with the lack of detail. So just, you know, somebody looking in our budget, I think they would have the same question too. Because you figure, you know, 2 years from now, these, you know, 06 and 07 and 07, 08 will have dropped off.
Good. I think I see exactly what you're talking about here. This example here on page 278 is an example of one change, obviously, we're seeing here and how it's broken out. Can you speak to the change we did, and we moved to it last year, in the way we're doing our budgeting, where in fact we're now capturing all costs, kind of more of a pure cost model, which does cause some problems and has caused quite a bit of more dialogue, not just because we have less revenue, but because we're understanding what the true cost is, including the soft costs that go into programs, which seems to be more holistic as far as the costing, but it is different. So having those 5-year examples, you're really comparing apples to oranges. So as we go through this period, last year, this year, next year, we'll have 3 years, I would expect, to compare in this type of a format. Can you speak to the challenge we're having?
Mayor, members of the council, there are two different issues that are being presented here. The issue on the bonding being broken out differently than it has in the past is due to the fact that a number of years ago the town went through a refunding of those bonds. So instead of having those bonds individually priced now, they're rolled into a package, so there is only one principal and interest payment, instead of having the bonds separately priced.
Mayor, I could?
Yes.
But is there a way maybe we could add some additional language or something in the budget so that even though there is only one, we still need to, I think it's good to know what the breakdown is.
The only breakdown that exists is the one principal and interest payment currently.
I think that is something that, you know, down here, as you mentioned, why are we going from the breakout to just the individual item? We could simply have something that says, fiscal year 08-09 refinanced all into one package. Now, accumulated debt is accounted for differently. But maybe that's not the greatest example, because there are a lot of items in the operational budget that you just can't compare anymore, because they are apples to oranges, because other costs are associated in programs.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
The
I think it's just difficult because it seems more like things are clumping. And if somebody wanted to really look in here and be able to dissect a cost, they'd have to go to a number of places in the budget to come up, where they come from. And I find that cumbersome.
Well,
One of the challenges that we have is that up until a few years ago, we budgeted at the department level. So there was no way to get detail below the department level. So if you wanted to know how much the code enforcement component of planning and zoning was, you couldn't tell, because it was just included in the line items in the planning and zoning department. Administration was one department, and we budgeted administration at that level. So if you wanted to know what the component town clerk cost, you couldn't tell. And that's the difficult we have going forward, is beyond 2.5 years ago, everything was budgeted at the department level. So to maintain a history, we have to start you at the department level to give you history that runs 5 years. In the last 2 years, we've been able to give you this more detailed history, but we can only give it to you for 2 years. Hopefully in a number of years, as we build new history, the budget process will become a little more transparent.
I like more detail like you have now. For example, there's not one cost in the operational budget for postage, or, it's now allocated across each department at, I would imagine an agreed expenditure amount. Some departments do more mailings than others, but previously it was either at a department level or perhaps at a town level. So we are getting more detail. We just don't have the years of history with that detailed breakout to look over 5 years. So if we don't change anything, again, here, if we're happy with how we're accounting for things, then each year we go on, we'll be able to track things more in a cyclical fashion.
That is our hope.
Okay. Councilmember Hanson, anything?
I know.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. We get a roll call.
Councilmember Elke?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Councilmember Cantino?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Mayor Schlum?
Aye, thank you.
Mayor 7-0.
All right. Great job, council, and thank you everyone for helping us through that. I want to thank the commissions. I want to thank the Executive Budget Committee. I want to thank staff. I want to thank the public for a great amount of input going through a budget where revenues are reduced so dramatically, and having such a high expectation of quality of life in Fountain Hills is quite a struggle. And of course, we had to say goodbye to quite a few staff members too through this struggle. So it's been very challenging, but thank you for everyone for working hard together to get through this. And I think we have a budget we can be proud of, and is going to help us get through this next year and until we face it once again next year. So thank you. Move on to item number 5. We'll adjourn the special session and convene the regular session. We request a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Is everyone doing okay? You need a little break? You're ready to move on?
Move on.
All right, move on into our regular session. Call the regular session to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Schlum?
Here.
Councilmember Cantino? Councilmember Leger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Hanson?
Here.
Councilmember Elke?
Here.
And Councilmember Dickey?
Here.
All right. I skipped the pledge, so would you mind please standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, thank you, everyone. Remain standing for invocation. Pastor tonight could not make it, so I'll stand in and offer some words. Dear God, thank you for allowing us to live in such a beautiful community. Please guide our conversations so we can get the most out of one another. Thank you for a great citizen community, great staff, and please continue to bless our beautiful town of Fountain Hills. Amen. Thank you. All right, move on into the mayor's report. Got a proclamation to read. Very important one for our Parks and Recreation. Designation of July as Park and Recreation Month, whereas Parks and Recreation programs are an integral part of our community throughout this country, including the town of Fountain Hills, and whereas our Parks and Recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of the community and region, and whereas Parks and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally and physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas Parks and Recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, and whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the town of Fountain Hills recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be it resolved that I, Jay Schlum, town mayor of the town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, recognize July as Parks and Recreation Month in the town of Fountain Hills. You're here, oh yes. All right, we'll move on with the scheduled public appearances, and we're fortunate to have from the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, Scarlett Spring here this evening. Welcome, Scarlett. And we've got a PowerPoint in the presentation. Are you going to have one overhead?
Yes,
there
I
as
do.
well? All right. Need any help with that?
Mayor, members of council, first, thank you so much for allowing me to come out. I always enjoy being able to speak directly to members of council, and to thank you for your partnership. I have the pleasure of working with the 19-member communities that make up the Greater Phoenix region. I'm always impressed by the time commitment that you put in to serve your communities. I get to do it from developing the economy in a region, and I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate the work that you do here in Fountain Hills. It's an important time. If you'll indulge me too, I'd like to share a few slides with you, but really to get at the heart of what's happening in our region, and even share some data with you recently around what's expected for the economy as we get into the competitiveness portion.
And Scarlett, where you can, this came up obviously as we drilled down on every expenditure we have in the budget. We talked about the value and what do we get back from our involvement in Greater Phoenix. So
absolutely,
or we can interject perhaps that would be helpful.
I will definitely do that. So just talking a little bit about who we are. So we are the region's public-private partnership, and we really perform three main functions for the region. The first is business attraction. The second is we market the region. And third, we provide competitiveness. And competitiveness means looking and seeing how we make the region more competitive, whether that's in the way we try to affect legislative policy, we put more economic development tools in the toolkit, or we get out and actually try and improve our competitiveness at a national level. What I've got in front of you, and I hope that you can see this, I'll do my best to explain. From right to left, you have 5 years worth of data around our prospect activity. This tells you a little bit about what's happened in the most recent recession and where we see business coming from. I will highlight two pieces of this, and that is the first being, the first line, the left-hand side is ADOC, that's the Arizona Department of Commerce. If you notice in 2006, about 35% of the prospects came to GPEC through the Arizona Department of Commerce. If a company is looking to have an expansion, the first place they're going to call is the state. And at the state, they're going to look for incentives. Thank you very much. Secondly, you'll see that over the past 5 years, that number has trended down to the past 2 years being respectively 22 and 16%. What that means is the phone stopped ringing at the state level. Why was that the case? Well, most of those calling are Fortune 500 companies, those companies that are looking for expansion, regional offices, and as we all know, in 2008 and 2009, with the stock market, those companies were not in expansion mode at all. So, because GPEC was not only able to maintain our level of prospect activity, a prospect is a company that already has jobs, capital investment, and project parameters. So this isn't just someone who's kind of quasi-interested. They actually have those parameters before we can technically call them a prospect. So because GPEC has been able to maintain our level of prospects, and this is data as of the end of March, we will be at 200 by the end of June. Where did the business come from? I'll draw your attention to the highest area that has grown, and that's our GPEC Direct. 5 years ago, we were generating roughly 20% of our prospects, our deal flow activity, and today we are generating 42% of that deal flow is directly what GPEC gets out and generates. How do we do that? This past year, we conducted 37 domestic trips and 2 international trips. So those are what GPEC either through our own outbound calling campaign, through the connections that we make. The second area that I'll just draw your attention to is this GPEC 100. As you can see over the past few years, that's around the 18 to 20% range. We've seen the past 2 years that be 13 and 16% respectively. Once again, a GPEC 100 by definition is a site selector. A site selector is a national paid organization that a company pays to do their kind of expansion search. So I wanted to show this to you just to provide a bit of context as to what's really happened over the past 5 years and how our organization has tried to respond to make sure that we're bringing viable projects to the community. That's what we do. We bring them to the community and allow our 19-member communities to take a look at them, see if they have the real estate to match. If you have the real estate to match, then obviously that's when you would submit a proposal. Another area that we've seen some significant increase, and we've only had an international program over the past 3 years, is in our international. So we have gone from relatively 27 to 30 prospects. This has been an enormous success for us. And this year, especially, we have been able to see about 1/3 of those from Canada, about 15% from China, and about 17% from Germany, and we've begun to see an uptick in Spain. So that's Germany, Spain has been a big sector for us in the international markets. And then what space are they in? Are they all call centers? Well, no, they're not. Advanced Business Service has actually gone from about 25% over the past few years to about 16 and 20% of our portfolio. The uptick has been in solar renewables over the past few years to this year being around 25% of our portfolio. Part of this reason is because when no one was getting any funding and the capital markets had dried up, it was the solar and renewable companies that were getting any venture capital, any private equity, and they were getting the stimulus funding that was coming out of the Obama administration. So much of this expansion activity was fueled by that. We were happy to see our biosciences, even in a tough market, stay flat. So VCs dried up for biotech as well, but we were really pleased to see we had a significant locate in Scottsdale called Nighthawk Radiology. That is one of the most successful radiology companies, and they're traded on the stock market. And they relocated from Idaho into the Scottsdale area. So that was one of our significant biotech locates. So what kinds of strategies do we have? Well, we do consistently, out of those 37 trips, we do consistently go into California. Mayor actually went with us last July on one of our trips into the Intersolar Conference, and that was there in the Bay Area. We will be going again this year, Mayor, so we put that invite out back to you if you're interested at all. And you'll just see by these numbers, I won't read them all for you because you can, but we generally get around 25% of our prospects coming out of California. And because of our selling strategy isn't one to go in and just, pillage California. We actually have a strategy that's about partnering with California. What does that mean? Well, that means that for the Bay Area, because so many, it's a great place for life sciences, it's a great place for solar and renewable, it's a great place for headquarters. So what we do is we actually go in, and you're not going to get a California company just say, I'm going to move my R&D. Something special happens in a lab when you get research partnering with university facilities, and so we don't go in asking for that. We would probably get run out. But what we do is say, when it is time for your company to go to full scale or go into the application, that's where Arizona is your perfect partner, because it's very difficult to go to scale in the California market, as you all well know. Cost of the facility, cost of labor is just extraordinary. That has been very, very successful for us. In doing that, we have actually been able to have some relocations coming out of that market. APL was a headquarter relocation, a global container company that did come out of the Bay Area. So we do have some that are coming and some additional ones that are in our pipeline. But that is our selling strategy. We do that same sort of strategy in the biotech area as well, and it has been significant. I will tell you, with the latest bantering that's been happening between the states around our immigration status, we have been very strong. As a matter of fact, Barry went about, it was the last week in May and met with the mayor of San Francisco. He got a drive-by with the mayor, but he did spend an hour with the mayor's chief of staff around some of the comments that had been made out of the city of San Francisco. And we have seen just in the recent weeks that they have come off of their resolution to not boycott, but just to strongly disagree with our position. So it's been very interesting, and we've taken a strong stance to make sure that California is not being, regardless about how you feel, we try to be agnostic at GPEC around the politics, but we've been very, very strong against states that are trying to boycott us. Regardless about what you think about that bill, boycotting a state and hurting innocent citizens is not the way to behave. So we've been very, very vocal about that. These are our data as it stands to date. We are 130% in the payroll generated back to the region. We are going to fall low on our average salary. You'll see we're at 85% of our goal. But for the number of jobs, we're at 154%. We'll be creating right at 2,500 jobs because this is a May number, so we will get at that goal, and we've achieved that. We will fall short of the high wage number of jobs. So what does that mean? It means the recession is still depressing the number of high quality jobs that we're able to attract, and then the average cost of those high wage jobs. So the number's down and the wage themselves is down. That's just a function of of the recession that we're in, and two performance metrics that we won't meet. But we are very happy to be able to bring 2,500 jobs to the market, including some of the emerging tech assist. And you'll see the media numbers are just off the charts because of a couple of things that have happened this year. Suntech, when we relocated the Chinese photovoltaic manufacturer here to Goodyear, that generated national media just by itself, and we've been able to leverage that particular Wall Street, USA Today in numerous ways. But this is a function of just really working hard in the media to make sure that people understand Greater Phoenix is a great place to bring your business. So, Mayor, I respect what you were saying around make sure that you talk about Fountain Hills as well. I've tried to weave in some of the important locates that have come to Scottsdale because Fountain Hills being in a partnership with both City of Phoenix and Scottsdale being neighbors, the benefit that you have by sitting and where that labor pool is going to come from this community as much as it comes from the City of Scottsdale, and that's why I've tried to make note of some of the high-level locates that have come there. There has been a response. This is based upon the real estate that you have available. When we send out an E-Track to the communities, then this has been your ability to respond to the different jobs. You were able to respond to Project Global, Project Wood, and Project Junction in this fiscal year. And the last two of these are still making decisions at this time, but working with Lori Gary and your economic development area, we have been able to, to partner on these, and we're still working those through. Other things of what are the benefits of being a part of GPEC? Well, we have a 25-member staff, a significant research and strategy. So if members of your economic development team and Lori have requests around financial impact analysis, we conduct that for all of our member communities and work with Lori to make that happen. We also support a CoStar database and provide that to the staff. We do Metro Comp analysis for 53 markets, and we model impact analysis. In addition to that, we had talked about some of the trade shows that we go to, the international trips of where your community is marketed, as well as we hosted executive tours and familiarization tours in this market, as well as just recently with meeting one of the investments that will be coming into Fountain Hills that was in our office last Friday, where we arranged for some meetings before, Mayor, you had EPCOR coming out and visiting your city. So those are things where we try to partner with you to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward as a region. Second, so all that's really been around business attraction, because it's one of our main drivers is to make sure that our metrics are about delivering jobs back to the region. But the second thing that we do is competitiveness. 2 legislative sessions ago, we introduced a bill. It was Barbara Left who introduced it, Senate Bill 1403. This was the Renewable Energy Tax Credit bill. And prior to the introduction of that bill, we lost every single solar and renewable deal that was brought to us. We either lost that to Albuquerque or to Oregon. We analyzed why that was happening. We modeled some of the best. We actually took Oregon's program and made it better. And when we passed that bill, we now are in the top tier. And quite frankly, we have, since Oregon has had to reevaluate their program, we now are in a 1-2 position in the Mountain West for solar and renewable deals. And what has that really meant? We have already landed, just since January, the bill became effective January of 2010, we have already landed these first 3, Suntech, Alpha, and Tower Automotive. And you see 2 that are immediate prospects. Actually, I can add 2 additional to that just as of this week. It'll be a decision of whether they're able to close here at the end of the year, or whether we'll be able to count them in that July time frame. But this is a real, this is because of passing smart, modeled economic policies so that we can go out and actually capture the opportunity that is there. That leads me actually to the next conversation that I want to have with you. We ran this year a bill that was called 2250. This was the bill that the Speaker of the House introduced. It went through many versions to improve that bill in the Senate. And the essence of that bill was 4 economic development programs which you will see: the Enterprise Zone, Job Training, a Quality Jobs Program, and an Opportunity Fund, and then 3 tax programs. This bill died the last evening before the legislature sine died. You'll see at the bottom, we model based upon, is it going to make us more competitive? You'll notice that in this bill, you wouldn't see the tax legislation, the tax code, the equalization tax rate, because we modeled that against competitiveness. And where, regardless of where you sit on that particular piece of legislation, we always model that based upon, is it going to increase our competitiveness? And it does not. So one of the things that we look to do is see, is it going to move us from either a last to a first-tier position in the Mountain West, or in some situations, is it going to put us in the top 10 in the nation? And is it fiscally responsible for the budget? And everything that is in this bill, particularly in the economic development programs, those are the first three, are either budget neutral or budget positive for the state when you model them over a 10-year time frame. There are some, in this particular bill, there were some tax cuts that had a hit on the budget. We were able to reduce that from the original version of $1.2 billion to be $67 million. This bill died. Some version of this, we are hopeful, is going to come back in this next legislative session, because it's imperative that we get more economic development tools in the toolbox, and I would ask for your help as we begin to go down that path in January. We've begun to start the education program, because one of the things that I'm most concerned about is that as we come out of this recession, that we're going to come out of this recession and not have a diversity in jobs. As a matter of fact, I was just sharing with Councilman Vice Mayor Brown. University of Arizona just put out a piece of economic data that said we will be more dependent on construction, retail jobs, and housing starts in 2013 based upon their projection than we were in 2007 before the recession began. So that meant before the recession began, 1 in 5 jobs was one of those 3 industries. It now is projected to be 1 in 3.5. So what we really must say at this legislative session is, look, we're going to come out of it eventually. It's anticipated now to be 2013, 2014 of when we'll be able to come back. We just want to come back and not be as dependent, to be much more diverse than we were, so that when the next economic downtip comes, that we're not as volatile as we were in this last session. So, from this standpoint, I would love the opportunity to come back more often and talk to you about that as we get further along. We try to stay in touch with all of the intergovs and your legislative members, but we really do need your help. It's a serious issue for us. The last thing that I'll talk about is just the marketing of the region. We've laughed and said that we've really been wanting a brand in Arizona, and we actually have one now. We might not like the brand that we've inherited over the past 4 to 6 weeks, but we do have a brand. And what we want to make sure that people understand is Arizona is not a place that doesn't have an open door, or this is not a racist state. This is a state that has an immigration issue, and that we're looking to find a path that we can move forward in, that businesses still want, to make sure that they're putting their headquarters here, they're doing their expansions here, they're putting their research and development. So we are working to make sure that we get a message out there that's stronger. If you've not had an opportunity to see the Opportunity Greater Phoenix website, I encourage you to take a look. We tell the story that the paper isn't telling. We tell the story that we have a Nobel Prize laureate, Lee Hartwell, that came out of Seattle in the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Institute, that is now sitting at Arizona State University. We tell the story about the entrepreneur that has relocated their business down to the biomedical campus. We try to tell the story about our state that is, a bit more than what you're getting at a high level that's in the paper. At the end of every week, we package those stories. We send those off to the USA Today, to the Wall Street, to the different media. We send them to 300 site selectors throughout the nation, so that we're packaging and telling a better story about what's happening here in Arizona. And then lastly, because real estate, we have 60 million square feet of office and industrial space available in this market today. That is a 10-year vacancy. We developed a tool working with our Community Building Consortium. This is a group of our real estate community that meet with us on a monthly basis and act as an advisory group to us. And this is a website of where we list shovel-ready, value-based asset, and we dress up a name. The truth is, those are distressed assets, but we call them value-based assets. And last, so it's shovel-ready, value-based, and then unique. So if there's hangar space, wet lab space, we try to pull out things that are unusual in the market. We take and market this to those 300 site selectors so that they know, A, there's real estate in this market, so we're trying to speed the process up. Real estate is a value in this market right now, and we try to give them a place where they can go to very quickly, very simply, and do that type of a search. So we're trying to work on the problems that we have in our community. We're very optimistic that we live in a great place. We actually championed and took a trip to Washington, D.C. the first week of April of this year to go and tell our story. Governor Brewer headed that. We had Attorney General Terry Goddard to go along, and we carried along many members of our community, 50 leaders, to go and to conduct meetings. We divided up into aerospace, business development, a capital track, media, and renewable energy. And we actually called on our state legislators. We got every single one of them and talked to them about what's happening in our state, how that they can help us, and to work together. We had not taken a trip like that as a state group in 10 years. So in some ways, kind of shame on us that we haven't done it. We're looking that we maybe take that kind of a trip about every 2 to 3 years. It's not something I think we can really have the bandwidth to do every year, but it was very beneficial to get to the nation's capital and to make sure that our legislators, our congressional leaders knew who the business community was and that we were talking to them in a straightforward way. Questions, Mayor?
Thank you very much, Ms. Spring. Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for Ms. Spring? Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thank you. Hi. Now, GPEG heavily lobbied the jobs bill, but did they foresee the implications of 1070 regardless of the boycotts and those kind of things? And did they communicate that if they saw that that could interfere with maybe some of your goals?
Mayor, Councilwoman, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if anyone thought it was going to get as far along as quickly as it did. We had heard that the bill was there, and we were so focused on the jobs bill because we try to play in the economic development space. You know, we don't, as much as we support education, we try not to get into that debate, even though we have opinions on it. So we try to stay in the space where we think we can be an expert. So we're not lobbyists. We do not have a lobbyist that works for us. We actually do have one lobbyist as a contractor, but we don't have anyone in our staff. So it's not one that we were terribly engaged with. What we've been able to find, which I think I'll answer your question, is we have yet to have a deal back out because of Senate Bill 1070. I will tell you, we have 3 deals right now that we will have to announce them under project names because they are stock sensitive, and we probably will not even announce them until January. They do not want to be associated with this. We've made special trips to their headquarter locations to make sure that everything is done so that they are not in the press of having an expansion in Phoenix right now, in the greater Phoenix area. As a matter of fact, it's not in Phoenix, but it's greater Phoenix. So we're fortunate on that standpoint. I would tell you we will not know if we're getting screened out in the early process, because what happens is when someone looks in the western U.S. and they say, give me the top 10 markets, Phoenix generally makes that first search. If you're going to get screened out, you're going to get screened out when you're down to the top 3 to 5. What we don't know if we're getting screened out in that early process, because that won't really show up until the September timeframe. But what we do know is of the prospects that are in our database, no one has pulled out as of yet. Did I answer your question?
Yep.
All right. Councilmember Lachey.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm hopeful that you'll continue to work with our community. It's awesome to see that we've had some response to opportunities, and I'm hopeful we'll have more, going forward. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, another question I had for you. The Department of Tourism and the Department of Commerce, and the way it's kind of going to go away and become a quasi-governmental organization, what is, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I was wondering what your impression of that was.
Mayor, Council, I'll do my best. We've been in close contact with the Department of Commerce. I mean, we're on the phone with them almost every day talking about a particular deal. But in regards to this, they're being quiet right now because I do anticipate that the governor is going to be making an announcement. So they don't want to get too far ahead of the governor in that. However, what has been alluded to is that, number one, their interaction with the regional economic development groups, whether it's GPEC, TRIO in Tucson, Flagstaff, or Yuma, is that will not change. What will change is that there will now be a private-public board. On that board will sit the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, the governor will chair it, and I believe there are 14 private sector board members. So what's really going to happen is the public-private leadership, not necessarily the transaction of a deal. That's as best as what I can tell from the communication that has been given to me. But I do expect that the governor is going to kind of handle that announcement on her own, and then we'll quickly see the Department of Commerce kind of fold in behind that.
And Mayor, one more thing then. Are there other states that do not have departments of commerce or, something similar like that?
Mm-hmm. Are there other states? Actually, every state has a Department of Commerce, whether they call it, everyone has they do, because that's actually the first place that anyone who's looking at a relocation would stop.
And that's what I meant. So in other words, it will be something different. So you and everybody who's interested in gaining economic vitality here in our state will have to be aware of that if you look at the state government of the state of Arizona, there will be no Department of Commerce.
And that's still a bit sketchy for me, because there's pieces, it appears that they will peel off the pieces that are about business attraction and retention and put them in this new ACA, Arizona Commerce Agency. It looks as though that's where that will be. There will still be parts of commerce because there's still the analysis that has to be done. There's a lot of pieces that are around renewable and grow smart that will stay, and I assume they're going to continue to be called commerce, but those departments will stay. I think what they're trying to do is really put a focus around business attraction, retention, how do we spawn entrepreneurship and keep small business alive.
Thank you.
Anything else for GPAC? Thank you very much, Scarlett, for coming
Thank
out.
you.
Thanks for a comprehensive presentation. And yes, keep Fountain Hills top of mind.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item is a presentation by Mr. Fred Bedell, Chair of the Fountain Park Subcommittee related to greening of our downtown, and give an update on the committee's activities. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm here to give you an update on the greening of the downtown committee's initiatives, and I'm standing in for Jerry Butler, who's out of town. He's the chairman of our group. Suffice it to say, when I was working, I always try to condense my presentations and information to one page. So I'm following that format tonight.
Thank you.
Let me preface this to say that I think this is a good example of how a public and private cooperative can coalesce around a particular challenge or initiative to get something done. Because here you have the Chamber of Commerce, you have the Business Advisory Council, you have the town, and then you have the Fountain Hills Cultural and Civic Association that coalesced around an issue to get something done. So the first thing that happened was that we employed urban planning firm, Swaback, to come up with a vision plan for the transformation of the downtown area. Following that, with your help and granting us $15,000, we came up with a landscape plan for Fountain Park. Okay, so what we looked at was, how do we get this started? How do we get people interested in this? So we looked at one, coming up with a demonstration project where we would plant a number of trees in the performance pad area, if you will, so that people could see that something happened, something could be done. And that did happen. That happened on April 30th, which is Arbor Day. Council members were present. It was hosted by the Girl Scouts, and it was what we considered an overwhelming success. So looking at that, we began to incrementalize our approach. We divided this into 3 phases. Phase 1 was a demonstration project, and we had very ambitious goals at the time. We thought everyone 1,000 tree program around. So reality came, and now it's 400 trees because it's dependent on donations from the private sector, from every. And with our group, we've raised funds. We've raised $30,000 to date as of April 30th. We spent $14,000 on the tree project. Needless to say, we got some information that we've got some help from the banks in town. Meridian Bank and Wells Fargo have made contributions outside of their funding guidelines, and we have applications in to Chase and Bank of America. So we're looking at drawing more funds to advance our project. Phase 2, if you will, we're looking at planting a grove of trees around the Veterans Memorial Project. And we want to upscale the landscaping area in that as well. So we're looking at that being the Phase 2 program, and hopefully we can pull that off by Veterans Day, November 11th. So we'll be working in that particular area. Long-term area, Phase 3, would be coinciding with the state centennial, which is in 2012, February. And once we receive the complete landscaping plan, we will plant trees in designated areas moving toward 2012, if you will. Needless to say as well, in this fiscal climate, as you know, you just passed the budget, and I wear another hat here because I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission, that our staff has a full plate. Okay. We've lost some staff members. We've had 2 departments have emerged. So we're looking at setting some priorities. You know, if you look at column A and column B, there's program mandated services in one column, and there's want to do services in another column. So if we want to do A, we can't do B. So the committee is looking at, one is contracting with a private entity to take up what the town council staff was doing before and moving these projects forward. So that's our big challenge going forward at this point. So in a nutshell, we're moving along with your help and your guidance. We would hopefully transform this area into what we've all looked at as being very attractive to the residents as well as the investors and so forth to come into Fountain Hills. So that's my presentation.
Awesome, Fred.
Okay, if I take any questions if you have.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions for Fred, Mr. Bedell, related to the greening? I think it is looking awesome, and you know, the whole committee is doing a great job, all the volunteers, and very appreciative of the fundraising, the generosity of those that have already provided funds to benefit the community down at Fountain Park. And the demonstration project, I've gotten great feedback from. I'm just amazed how quickly it happened, how quickly they got water to it. And I know the coordination, and I know the committee's been very thankful of our town staff there at Fountain Park, so lift them up as well. But the committee's done a great job, and you're right, it's a great example of a public-private partnership in action, and the demonstration project's proven very successful.
And on behalf of the committee, thank you for your support.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Bedell. All right, now we'll move to call to the public. Any speaker cards tonight?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. On to our consent agenda. Request a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
So moved.
Second?
All right. I don't know who to go with here. I'll leave it up to Beth. And we got a roll call, please.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Mayor Slum?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger? Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Councilmember Cantino? Vice Mayor Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke?
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the regular agenda. We will have one report. Is that still true on these items? But we will talk about and take motions separately on each of the quote-unquote community contracts. First item, consideration of Second Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement between the Town of Fountain Hills Extended Hand Food Bank, extending the term of the contract by 1 year in the amount of $37,840. Next item will be consideration of Second Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement between the Town of Fountain Hills and the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce and Tourism, extending their term contract by 1 year to the amount of $129,000. Item 9, consideration of Second Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement between the Town and Fountain Hills Community Theater, extending that term by 1 year in the amount of $90,300. And then the last one we'll talk about is consideration of Second Amendment for Professional Services Agreement between the Town and the Boys and Girls Club Greater Scottsdale, extending the term by 1 year in the amount of $100,000. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The 4 agenda items represent contract amendments for contracts entered into by the town in 2007 with Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce, Fountain Hills Theater, Boys and Girls Club of Scottsdale, and Extended Hands Food Bank. These contracts were for the provision of services that the town desired but did not provide, and they all expire on June 30th. As a result of the decline in general fund revenues, a committee was formed to identify funding for the community contracts going forward. The committee identified potential sources of revenue, 2 of which were on tonight's agenda. However, the consensus of the council during a work study was to extend the current contracts for 1 year to allow the committee to continue working on the scope of the contracts as well as funding. The exception is the scope of work for the Fountain Hills Community Theater. The theater had offered to accept a reduced funding level, but with a reduced level of service, specifically eliminating the requirement to produce 1 performance on a weekend at the Fountain Hills Amphitheater at Fountain Park. Due to an oversight on my part, the performance did not get removed from the Second Amendment that's before the council. If the council approves the amendment, a revised scope of work will be provided to the theater. In addition to extending the contracts for 1 year, the funding for 3 of the 4 contracts was reduced due to budget constraints. All other terms and conditions remain the same. Staff understood the council's direction to extend the contracts by 1 year to allow for a further evaluation and possible modification to the other terms and conditions by the committee next fiscal year. The committee recommends approval of the amendments to the community contracts.
Thank you very much, Julie. All right, item 1, consideration of the Extended Hands Food Bank. Going to get a motion to accept that at $37,840 for 1 more year?
So moved.
Second?
All right, any speaker cards on that item?
No, sir.
All right, comments or questions on the that contract? All right, seeing none, look for we've got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you. Item 8 is consideration Second Amendment to the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce Tourism, extending their term by a year and the amount of $129,000.
Mayor?
Councilmember? Yes, I'm sorry.
Andrew has indicated that he feels I have a conflict of interest on this item, so I will be recusing myself.
Thank you very much. Well, let me get a motion on that item.
So moved.
Second?
A second. Any speaker cards on that item?
No, sir.
All right, any questions or dialogue on that item? Thank you very much. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor 6-0.
Thank you very much. And item 9 is the Second Amendment, professional services with the Fountain Hills Community Theater, extending the term by 1 year in the amount of $90,300. May I get a motion on that item?
So moved.
In a second?
Second?
All right.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, as I did before, I will abstain from this vote.
Thank you very much. And first we'll see if we got a little dialogue and speaker cards. Yes, sir. Any speaker cards on this item, Bev?
No, sir.
All right, any questions, dialogue on this item? All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dickey? I'm sorry. Councilmember Cantino?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Schlum?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke?
Aye.
Mayor 6-0.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 10, consideration Second Amendment professional services with the Boys and Girls Club extending 1 year in the amount of $100,000. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second? All right, any speaker cards in this item?
No, sir.
All right, any questions, dialogue? Councilmember Dickey.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to talk a little bit about the, what led to the decision of fully funding the Boys and Girls Club with the $100,000, which was the same as it had gotten the years before. I wanted to bring up the minutes of the meetings that we just all approved and to kind of couch the conversation at the time. Vice Mayor Hanson noted that Boys and Girls Club did not have an automatic increase in the 3-year term of the contract. So looking at that, all others were increased and they did not. Again, Vice Mayor commented that they should look at the fact that Boys and Girls Club contract did not increase and figure out what that number would be if they had had an automatic increase like the other groups did. Councilmember Dickey said she did not believe the groups had automatic increases and would like someone to please talk about this, that she thought it was based on expenses. Vice Mayor Hanson noted she thought it was written into their contracts, a certain percentage of an increase. Mayor, you did not want to go into too much detail, but you did say that in light that they did not have the increase, they entered into the contract initially and did not realize that was even an option, so believe that Vice Mayor had made a valid point. And moving on, that to keep that in mind, to keep in mind what the Vice Mayor had said, that you'd be willing to consider an amendment. At that time, the Boys and Girls Club was being amended at 14% like all the rest of the contracts were, which would have gone from 100 to 86,000. So in my opinion, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, is the decision was made on information that was presented at the time that has turned out to not be the case. In the minutes also, Councilmember Dickey stated she wanted to set the record straight as there was some doubt about whether these were automatic increases, and it was her understanding that some of them were not. And then, of course, we went on with the vote, which was the $25,000 off of whatever. I don't want to talk about that, but everybody was reduced by the 14%, and then, but that motion was amended to add back the $14,000 based on what we now know was not the case for these contracts. So I am asking for dialogue on that again, because out of all of the cuts that we've been talking about and everything that we've been doing, and out of the spirit of fairness, I feel like we should bring this up again, because I think the decision was made maybe without all the full information. So I would appreciate it if anybody had any thoughts on that.
Good, thank you. I think you made it quite clear, and the clarity is good, so appreciate it. Any other comments on that before I address that item? Councilmember Dickey, thank you for those comments. I think I've considered that as well myself, and I'm comfortable with where we ended up, but I do appreciate the clarification. Obviously, some did increase, some did stay the same, so I'm comfortable with where we're at.
Okay, Mayor, what do you mean some increase? What is
I'm sorry, some of the contracts increased over time. The tourism and the food bank, was it food bank increased over time? I can't remember all of them offhand right now, it's the exact dollar amounts, but some of them didn't increase. There was dialogue, as you stated, we had that the community theaters increased, but it appears it did not, and now I understand that.
And Mayor, just to go along with the discussion about the budget, one of the things that we were told when we were talking about some of the cuts we had to make included overseeding and things like that. The Fountain Hills Soccer Club has decided that they cannot overseed Desert Vista Park, which is an amount of $12,000. And I had heard from a resident a couple months ago saying based on the current condition of the soccer fields at Desert Vista, I respectfully request other options be considered so that the main field themselves do not become basically dirt in the play areas. We also talked a little bit about the transportation issue, which we know will be worse in a couple of years, but for this particular year, I don't know if you saw in the paper, there was an article about the libraries. We had gotten information from the president of the Fountain Hills Library Association this past year, saying that they were in danger of losing some funding. That bill did die, but there is very much renewed interest in bringing that back. So I would offer that with the $14,000, we could possibly do some other things, including the fact that we did not raise the bed tax by the amount that was in the budget. So I was putting that out there.
I think I tracked exactly what you were saying. I don't necessarily think I'm not much interested in equating funding with one to another. I think we kind of went through that with the legislature this last term a little bit, where it seemed as if some organizations were pitted against the other, and sometimes it can look that way. I don't want to equate, a reduction in one with an increase in another. All these things that we funded over the time have all provided value, and I like having more of a holistic discussion on the budget related to each individual item on its own. So I saw some correlating of one 12,000 item with a 14,000 item here, and we can have that discussion, but I'm not much interested in it. I like more of a holistic individual item approach and understanding what the community wants, and hopefully we'll make the best decision as those representatives. But the clarity that you had and the dollar amounts being so tight, I appreciate you bringing up those items, but I don't think you're looking at us comparing one to the other.
Mayor, in a holistic way, I'm looking at an issue of fairness on what I feel is fairness with these community contracts.
Appreciate it. Council members? Councilmember Brown.
And I would also like to be put on record that I stated when we went from 86 back to 100,000 that I didn't feel like that was a fair move. I still feel like it's good for one, it's good for all, and especially in this environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's been some good clarifying tonight, so thank you for that. Any other dialogue before we've got a motion and a second. We asked if there speaker cards in this item?
No, sir, no speaker
Okay.
cards.
And so we do have a motion and a second on this, correct? Okay, we do. Thank you. Any other dialogue on this item? We are on the Boys and Girls Club extension of 1 year at $100,000. That's the motion. All right, I'll call for those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the quote-unquote community contracts. Move into item number 11, consideration of approving the 4-day, 10-hour per day work schedule for the town employees on a permanent basis. Hi, Joan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In June of 2009, the Council approved the Town Hall business hours for fiscal year 2009-10 to be Monday through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and closing on Fridays. Council directed staff during this past fiscal year to evaluate these hours based on 4 criteria. The first one, which is enhancement of customer service. Town staff has done that and found that our customers have benefited from the extended town hall hours due to the increased access to town hall. In fact, the building safety and administration front desk have received approximately 8% of their total customers prior to 8 a.m. Monday through Thursday and after 5 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And the court has received approximately 12% of their total customers before 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. Monday through Thursday. This includes telephone calls as well as walk-in customers. Then the front counter staff, I talked to Kathleen and Jane before they left to see if they had heard any comments from customers coming in complaining that we were closed on Fridays, and they indicated that not once have they had a customer come in. They did have a few on rare occasions that they said would come in on Monday and say, gee, I was here on Friday, I didn't know that you were closed, but they said it was more of a comment than a complaint. They weren't complaining about it. I also checked with the building safety counter, and they had received no complaints from customers either. We've done an ongoing survey with customers walking in. We've had the forms available for them to fill out, and I went through those this week and found that 85% of the forms filled out were in favor of continuing the 410 schedule or didn't care one way or the other. and 15% were in favor of going back to the 5-day, 8-hour-a-day schedule. And Judge Armbruster was kind enough, he asked me to read an email that he sent me. He's been a strong advocate of the 410 work week for the court, and I'll just read a portion of this. He says, as the presiding judge for the Fountain Hills Municipal Court, I believe it's my responsibility to share with you the positive impact this schedule has had on the business of the court, the town's judicial branch. First of all, court users have certainly taken advantage of the extended workday hours as reflected in part by the number of hearings that have been scheduled between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. For example, approximately 30 hearings have been scheduled during this time just since the beginning of this calendar year. This window of time permits the court to schedule matters so that the court users do not have to take time off work. Similarly, MCSO also appreciates the extended hours and that their deputies can appear right after the night shift change in the morning rather than waiting until later in the day, which cuts into their sleep time. The 410's work week has also had a positive impact on the court's use of video conferencing for in-custody defendants. Scheduling these cases in the early hours is not only beneficial to the MCSO detention staff in processing our defendants, but such early processing also opens up the later hours for conducting other court business. In addition to the matters that are actually scheduled, there have been countless defendants who have appeared on a walk-in basis in the early morning and late afternoon hours to take care of other court matters such as making fine payments and appearing on outstanding warrants. Further, the end-of-day extended hour is the most common time for individuals to appear on requests for civil protective orders. As reflected in the court's mission statement, we are committed to professionally serving our citizens by administering justice in a fair, efficient, and respectful manner. The 410 schedule has certainly enhanced the Fountain Hills Municipal Court's ability to serve our court customers. It's also been noted that the court may schedule some court business on Fridays when participant issues require it, and this has seldom been needed or required. The judge also told me earlier today that he had contact 4 of the courts in the valley that are working 410 schedule to see how, if they have been as successful as the Fountain Hills Court, and they all reported that they've been extremely successful and that they are going to continue with the 410 schedule. The second criteria that we have evaluated this last fiscal year is the cost savings in energy consumption. And although we didn't have as much cost savings as we had predicted, part of that reason is because we had predicted lowering our hours for our custodian staff that would not be working on Fridays. But in fact, with the reduction in staff that we had with custodians, and they've had to continue to work to do some of the deep cleaning and stuff on Fridays, so their hours on Fridays weren't cut as much as we initially thought they would be, but we have saved about $8,112 in electricity and water sewer charges. That's for the town hall and for the street yard. And we've also, of course, with the employees driving one less day to work, we've had a reduced consumption of gasoline by the employees. The third criteria was effectiveness in meeting the council's direction to be a steward of the natural environment by creating a positive environmental impact. And Green Fridays, or our being closed on Fridays, are in a direct alignment with Maricopa's County Trip Reduction Program. That program states that employers are required to reduce the amount of travel and trips to work by car because of pollution problems that threaten federal funding levels for Maricopa County. So this has met that criteria for them. In fact, in one day, our employees drive 931 miles round trip to and from work. That includes all of that's just our full-time employees, the people that work outside of town and inside. And our being closed on Friday also upholds the town environmental initiatives. This was directly aligned with the council's goal that created an environmental policy for the town. Fuel conservation by approximately 48 full-time town employees equals 4,992 fewer commuting trips annually. So that's a lot less time on the road, which equates to 48,412 fewer commuting miles annually. Reduce pollution with these cars not being on the road for those miles. 68,000 pounds less carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere annually just from our own full-time employees. And I was reading a report the other day that said in cities across the globe, the personal automobile is the single greatest polluter, as emissions from 1 billion vehicles on the road add up to a planet-wide problem. Driving a private car is a typical citizen's most air-polluting activity. The negative effects of automotive emissions are maximum when you sit in traffic surrounded by cars and their engines idling. The fourth criteria was employee recruitment and retention and overall job satisfaction. By talking to the employees, they've all expressed, especially the ones that have to come from out of town and drive quite a distance, say that they experience much less stress by missing the rush hour traffic when they can come earlier in the morning and go home later in the evening. There's been a significant savings in commuting time each week for 33% of our staff who travel from outside of Fountain Hills. And during these tough economic times, the employees really appreciate this and look at it as a benefit for working for the town that they're able to work the 4/10. I also we did an online survey of all of our employees last month, the month of May, to find out, how they felt about the 4/10 survey, or the hours, and 81% of them, of our town staff that responded to the survey, were either in favor of or continuing the 4/10 schedule. 19% were in favor of going back to the 5-day, 8 hours a day schedule. And the pattern with those that wanted to go back to the 5/8, I was reading through their comments because we gave them the option to add any comments there, were that the 10-hour day seemed long for them, they were tired by the end of the week, and that there was less time for them to exercise. So they were too tired, at the end of the week or the end of the day to continue their exercise program. One of them even said you should have weighed all the staff before you started this to see how much weight we've gained since we started the 4/10 because we weren't able to exercise. So, how is the employees' work week affected? We still, on the 4/10 schedule, we still work 40 hours a week. The reduced number of days does not equate to reduced hours of work per week. Exempt employees continue to work on Fridays if they're required to do so, and what we try to allow them to do whenever possible is if they have to come in for Friday for a meeting or an event in town or something like that, is to take a different day off during the week so they don't have to work so many hours. And again, studies have shown that work-life balance improves productivity and quality of work, and I've heard that from our employees, that they feel like they're more productive. They can complete projects during the day instead of setting them aside and picking them up the next day because they got a few more hours each day to do that. And finally, the trend towards this 4/10 schedules is increasing, especially throughout the valley. I know last year when I reported there was one or two. I think Avondale was the forerunner in the 4/10 schedule, and Queen Creek kind of followed suit with them. Today, Avondale is still, they're in their third year of working a 4/10 schedule. Buckeye is working 4/10s. Mesa, Payson, Peoria just started the 4/10 schedule. Pine Top Lakeside is in their third year, I think, of doing it. Queen Creek is doing it. And Surprise is going to be going to a 4/10 work week just for the summer, kind of as a trial period to see how that goes. So I did contact some of these cities to see, if they're still happy with it and if their customers are still happy and if it looks like they're going to keep going with it. And the ones that responded to them, about half of them that responded back to me prior to tonight's meeting, reported that they've all been very, very successful and that they're going to continue doing them. Some of them have experienced more cost savings than we have in utilities because they're able to shut down entire buildings. They're much larger than we are and they're spread out with more buildings. But overall, they said that's not the factor that they're really looking at. It's more to retain their employees and please their employees because they haven't gotten pay increases or benefit increases and stuff because of the economy for some years, the same as Fountain Hills has done. We're all in the same boat that way. So based on this overwhelming positive results in all 4 areas that the council directed staff to evaluate, it is staff's recommendation that the council approve the 4/10 work week for town staff going forward. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Joan.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone from the public on this item?
No, sir.
All right, look for a motion to Is there any special wording on this item here?
Mayor?
Councilmember Dickey.
Move to approve permanent change to town hall business hours by lengthening the hours of operation Monday through Thursday to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., closing the town hall on Friday.
Second.
All right, thank you. And just to clarify further, great report, very thorough. Thank you for getting all that feedback and trending and being sensitive to our customer service, you know, being number one and getting that feedback, and also to staff, because that's 11-hour day is a long day. So appreciate getting that, or understanding their feedback. I believe there'll be, once construction increases, I believe there'll be greater benefit in the mornings in particular, by getting, having a greater window of opportunity to do business. And that's been the main gist for me, is to understand that we're serving our customers best.
Absolutely.
And those that work obviously are coming in earlier or later, and it's good to hear some more specific details from the court. But also, to clarify, not everybody is on a 410. Can you speak to that? Our sheriff's office obviously is here 7 days a week, 24/7, and other departments. Would you talk to that?
Yes, obviously our public safety, you know, can't work 410s. They have to be here to protect the community, and our senior center and community center is open 7 days a week also. Some of the staff at the community center do work 410s. They've elected to do so, and some of them have elected not to do that. We've left it up to the directors to kind of monitor that and lead their staff one way or the other, how they want to do that. Our park staff still work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And again, we've left that up to the director to do that. And so I don't know, haven't heard much feedback from that. I think, you know, some of them that were skeptical, I know, for instance, there was employees in the street department that were originally didn't want to work 410s. They thought that was too long of a day, and especially in the summers with the heat. And now when I've talked to them, they've turned totally around and said, no, we love it. Please don't take it away. So, yeah, so there are still some areas, obviously our community center and our parks are still open, you know, 7 days a week.
Thank you again. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any other dialogue, questions? Councilmember Elke?
Thank you. Ms. McIntosh, just a few questions for you.
Sure.
Do you know the number of employees that are on 410s as compared to the number of employees that are on 5/8s?
Not exactly, but I know that currently we have 48 full-time employees, and I know that the majority of them are on 410s. The only people that aren't are a few at the community center that are full-time. And our parks guys, they're not. So there's 4 there. I would say maybe 10 people are still on the 5/8 are full-time. Part-time, obviously, they come and go because most of them work at the community center or in our park. So 410s doesn't affect them one way or the other.
Okay. And the numbers that you had given earlier about the public, 85% were in favor, didn't care, and then we had 15% that weren't in favor of the 410s. Of that 85% that were in favor, didn't care, how many were in favor and how many didn't care? And what was the total number, if you have that? Just out of
The total number was, I know, a lot less than the previous year because, well, probably for a couple of reasons. We have repeat customers and they had already filled out the survey the prior year, and also because our business has been down, obviously, because of the economy, so we didn't have as many. But I think there were like a total of 89 surveys from our customers that were filled out. And I don't have those figures with me as to how many, but I can tell you the higher percentage of that 85% was that they liked the 410s. It was a higher percentage than that they didn't care one way or the other. But I'm sorry, I don't have those exact figures with me.
Mayor?
Councilmember, hello,
Hi.
town manager. Not council member yet. You get a little more pay than we do. Town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I do remember the last time we reported those, I seem to recall that 50% before, the last time you presented some of these figures, were in favor of the 410 schedule, and I believe the balance of that 85% was ambivalent to the...
No, actually, I have the report that I gave last year, and it was pretty much the same with customer service. We went up a little bit because I have the report here, and I think it was like 84.5% were in favor of going to the 410s, and 15.5% were against it. And this year it went up a little bit by 0.5% and down 0.5% in the people that wanted to stay at
There's a
5/8.
percentage there that didn't care either way.
Pardon me?
There's a percentage there that didn't care either way.
Yes, but that was included in the 85%. And yes, and you're right, I don't know what those figures were. Yeah, it might have been 50/50 last year. It wasn't even close to 50/50 this year. There was a much larger percentage that wanted to do the 410s.
Ms. McIntosh, of the, you did the polling of the online polling for the employees. You said there was 81% in favor, 19 that were opposed to going back to a 5-day work schedule. Did you get a number as to how many?
We had 39 total, the people that responded.
Okay.
And again, I remember that, but I don't have the details here, I don't think, of how many of those were, I don't have that. I know there were 39 respondents.
And I know it has been said many, many, many times up here that we have a fantastic staff, and you know, a lot of these staff, I realize, will probably come in even like an hour earlier, even a half hour earlier to get here and get a jump on their day. So in some instances, we're creating 11 and maybe even in some instances 12-hour work days for some of these very well dedicated staff members. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I think that they did that when we were 5/8 too, so it doesn't really matter because we do have dedicated staff, and you know, they'll stay and work until the work is done, and we're very fortunate in that way. So I think that probably overall maybe they've worked fewer hours on the 410s because they've had, like I said earlier, longer to complete a project when they started it. That doesn't mean they always just stick at 10 hours. There are some that work longer because they choose to.
Have you, and this question could be for the town manager as well, have you seen any divide between the employees, those that are working 410s and those that are working 5/8s? And this would only apply to the full-time employees. Has there been any discord or any comments made by the employees that they feel that?
The only discord I've heard has been from our park staff. I know that because they're full-time, the guys that work during the day, and I think some of them would like to work the 410 schedule, and some of them like the working 5 days a week. And you know, so they would like to, I think, be given the choice to do that. Again, we leave that up to the director of the department to determine what's the best way for that department to do that. And I think in that case, they've determined that it's just better that it's either all or nothing, you know, not to break that up. But that's the only area where I've heard any discord there.
Mary, I have just one more question, but I think it'd probably be better directed at Judge Armbruster. I notice he's back there in the back. If I could just ask you a quick question, Judge.
And Judge, welcome.
Counsel?
Hey, Judge.
Councilman
Good evening.
Murphy. Good evening.
Just a quick question for you. I noticed on the outside of the door coming into the building here, there's a sign that says up there, anyone that needs an injunctive order, they can contact I think it's Scottsdale Municipal Court and the McDowell Mountain Justice Court, and they have the court's numbers on there. And it's on one of the Green Friday placards. What happens if, you know, let's just give you a scenario, somebody needs an order of protection, they have a situation that happens Thursday night and they need to come in Friday. Is there something in place where you could come in and issue that, or would they have to go to Scottsdale or McDowell Mountain?
Well, first, Mayor and Councilmember Elke, first of all, for a long time, and I can't tell you exactly how long the statute has been in effect, but there's the ability of an individual, anytime a court isn't open, whether it's on a holiday or on a weekend, to seek an emergency protective order. There's a process for that very reason. We also spoke to that the first time I addressed the council when the idea of the 410s was introduced, and as you all may recall, I shared with you that the court was going to be a little unusual insofar as how I was going to approach the 410s, because I recognized that there could be some circumstances where it would be necessary for the convenience of the parties or the necessity of business to be available on Fridays. And as Ms. McIntosh noted, that hasn't been a high demand on the court. But we have had the occasion where we have addressed issues and scheduled matters, and including the protective order on one occasion. But I inquired today of a number of the other judges in the Valley who have currently been on the 410s, including the representative from Avondale, the presiding judge from Mesa, a representative from the Buckeye Court, and the judge in Peoria, who's going to be going on a 410 schedule, the presiding judge in Peoria, effective July 1, just to get a sense from them of what the impact has been on protective orders, and they had the same reaction to what my experience has been. Interestingly, people in a community who, for unfortunate circumstances, feel the need to seek a protective order, they want to stay in the community. Fortunately, we have the ability to refer them to other courts, whether it's Scottsdale or the McDowell Mountain Justice Court. They have the ability to seek an emergency protective order. But our experience in Fountain Hills is in most occasions, whether it's a holiday or because it's the Green Friday, people would prefer to seek their petition here locally. That's a personal choice for them to make. The reasons, there are a myriad reasons why they would maybe want to do that. But they do have those options nonetheless. The other observation I would make has been shared by the other courts too, that have been on the 410s, and that they have received no complaints. They've received no indication from the surrounding courts who are not on 410s that there's been any spike or problem with them taking on additional protective orders that were noteworthy. And so that tells me that the population, that sensitive, important population that unfortunately has to deal with these sort of issues, that at least in their minds, they have the opportunities in Fountain Hills and these other communities that are going on 410s.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge. Anything else, Council? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of continuing 410s on a permanent basis, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much, Joan. All right, item 12, consideration of awarding annual landscape agreement to Artistic Lands Management in the amount of $109,127.20 for the period July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2011. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Slum and members of the council. You have before you this evening the consideration of our annual landscaping agreement. I have not been before you now in a number of years under the agreement that we have in place now, and we have duplicated in this particular agreement. It is initiated for 1 year, and it's renewable for 4 additional years for a total of 5 years, assuming that both parties are interested in keeping that arrangement in place. This covers the mowing of town parks, maintenance of all town parks, rights-of-way medians, including Avenue of the Fountains, and other town property. In addition, it also includes overseeding in some of the grass areas and trimming of a number of trees. The current landscaping agreement will expire at the end of this month, and as I indicated, it's renewable for after its first initial year for 4 additional years for a total of 5. In the process, we advertised in the Arizona Business Gazette on April 22nd, 2010 and April 29th, and also in the Fountain Hills Times on April 21st and 28th. We had 12 firms attend the mandatory pre-bid meeting, which was subsequently we had a bid opening, and the bids were read aloud on Monday, May the 24th at 2 p.m. We had 9 of those 12 firms submit bids. 3 of the bids were eliminated for various reasons, and the attached bid sheet, which you have, shows the results of the bids. We had 6 subsequent bids that we brought forward. We also did a review, as indicated, the bid forms. We also checked with the references. And the reference that we have for the firm that we're recommending was that they have performed work, and the 3 references they gave us were ASU's Polytech campus and 2 other communities larger than ours. All 3 of those contracts exceeded the amount, sometimes 2 and 3 times the amount of the contract they have with us. In each of those, they perform very similar kinds of work, median maintenance, park mowing, those kinds of things. And without exception, all of them were highly complimentary of this particular firm. So staff is recommending acceptance of this contract.
Thank you, Mark. Any speaker cards on this item?
No, Mayor.
All right. Can we get a motion here?
Mayor, move to approve contract number 2011-101, annual landscaping agreement to Artistic Land Management, Inc. in the amount of $179,127.20 for the period of July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2011.
right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any questions or discussion on this item? Thank you for the presentation, Mark. Seeing no discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 13, consideration resolution 2010-17, authorizing the submission of an application for grant consideration by the Arizona Department of Transportation and the Maricopa Association of Governments relating to Saguaro Boulevard pedestrian and landscape improvements. Hi, Randy. Welcome.
Mayor, Council, I want to tell you that this is I think the first grant application that we've ever submitted that actually required a council resolution to be a part of the application. For your information, this project is along the east side of Saguaro Boulevard, and just so you can locate it, it goes just south of Messenger's Mortuary to the Ha Ha China there. And we really started back on this project concept back in 2004, meeting with the Business Vitality Advisory Committee and working with the Chamber of Commerce on this. And the project really never moved forward due to a lack of a funding source. It's now in our capital improvements plan for construction in FY 2012-13. So if we are indeed awarded this grant, it would greatly reduce the amount of town funding needed for this project. The town has made the initial submittal of this grant application as a pedestrian facility project to the Maricopa Association of Governments for a transportation enhancement project. And MAG will need to have the complete packet before they can forward this to ADOT for their review. It's a really long, arduous process, in fact. Project cost estimate on this project would be $633,000 in federal aid funding, and then it would require minimum town matching funds of $38,000. The grant selection process is quite lengthy, and ADOT would then complete the selection process in November. If the town is selected for this project, it would be about 3 years till the project was ready for construction. Staff does recommend approval of this grant application resolution, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So we're approving, we are resolving to apply for a grant.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're not approving a project. We're
Resolving
although
to
that's
apply.
what they're looking there. They must have had some grant applications or people not follow through on grants that were awarded to them, I would imagine.
I assume that's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much, Randy. Any speaker items on this?
No, Mayor.
All right, council, we'll probably have a specific motion here to approve a resolution. Look for a motion.
Move to
Councilmember Dickey.
approve submittal of grant application to ADOT for federal aid transportation enhancement grant funding for the Saguaro Boulevard Colony Panorama Frontage Sidewalk Project.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thanks. Questions on this item for staff? Dialogue? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, thank you very much, Randy. Good luck with that one. And item 14, council discussion direction to the town manager. None there. Item 15, summary of council requests and reports on recent activity by town manager. Rick?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I know many are anticipating the completion of the Shade Climbing Lane project, originally slated to be completed for June the 30th. Indications are now that that completion will be pushed out to about the third week in 23rd of July, precisely. There are three factors affecting this delay. One is the unanticipated needs associated with signaling infrastructure that needed to be accommodated in the original plan. So there were some last-minute accommodations that needed to be made for our signaling that wasn't in the original plan. Number two is that there was quite a bit of infrastructure found along the excavation that they did not anticipate and needed to accommodate. Whenever you dig, you always find things that surprises in the dirt. And third, it was a lack of anticipation of how hard our soil is here in Fountain Hills. And so the excavation itself has been a lot more difficult and time-consuming. But the project is going well. We do anticipate a completion on the 23rd of July. About the second week of July, there will be overnight milling of the road that will close the road completely between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. And traffic will be detoured for about 5 days during that milling. So wanted to give you the latest status on that project. Also today, another letter from ADOT confirming that in the fall of this year, they will proceed with the Shade Gap project between Saguaro and Fountain Hills Boulevard and the construction of a median there. And so that's exciting. And looking forward to that project being done within 3 months of start of that project. So hopefully by Christmas, we'll have almost a brand new Shea, at least from nearly all the way from Saguaro to Palisades. Next year, we will address, of course, the project at the intersection of Saguaro and Shea, which will include an overlay of that section all the way to our town limits. And so here in a little while, we're going to look a little different and for the better.
Thank you. And that's again westbound.
That's the westbound lanes, yeah.
Westbound lanes, and note that the westbound lanes in that gap area, we're very fortunate that's coming through, and we're able to reallocate, in essence, that money. The savings of $1 million from the expected cost on the uphill piece to the gap piece, because the gap piece, where there is no median, there's no protection from erosion, and it's obvious that there are pieces of that road, even on the median side in the westbound lane, where the road is deteriorating there on the inside part of the road. So.
And that gravel median has been a hazard for us.
Well, that'll be nice. So at least on one side of the road, and that's the westbound side, certainly the rougher side needed update. Anything else?
That's all right now, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.